Visit the contest page at KSLSports.com for your chance to win Jazz tickets, Utah Hockey Club tickets, concert tickets, and more. Plus, this week, we're giving away tickets to the Utah Sportsman's Vacation and RV Show, February 13th, that's obviously today, through the 16th at the Mountain America Expo Center. Visit KSLSports.com for your chance to win. Joining us now for this hour will be Mitch Harper, our BYU insider for KSL Sports. At 9 o'clock, we'll turn it over to Steve Bartle. Now, we don't want those guys. We've got to make sure we separate because those guys are rivals. So we've got to send Mitch out one door, and then we'll bring in Steve in the other door. Getting those two together, it's like Patrick Mahomes Sr. and John Rocker. Did you see all that?
Oh, okay.
I don't know what was going on there. Well, I think that might have been staged. I don't know. But those two going face-to-face, nose-to-nose in New Orleans last week, I guess.
It'll be like John Chaney, John Calipari back in the day where we're just fighting. That's what we do in press conferences.
I'll kill you!
Right after Harlan's going off, me and Bartle had our own exchange.
Yes, that'll be rough. You're two big guys. I'd like to actually see that. See who can win. Maybe we could do that for home field advantage. So, Mitch is in for the next hour or so. Let's start off with the AD thing since that's fresh. You know, Tom Holmoe, I was talking to him, communicating with him last night, and we're just going on, and I can remember when he got the job. You know, he was interim director. They had a couple of guys there. A guy named Peter Pilling was also there. And then Tom went out, got the job. And one of the things he did shortly thereafter is he called up me and Gordon Monson, and we met him at a Mexican restaurant in downtown Provo upstairs, and we met him for like 3 hours. And he's a media-savvy guy, and he wanted to talk to us. Both of us were working for the newspaper. Both of us were doing the radio. Eventually, I obviously gave up the newspaper and concentrated on the radio and electronic stuff. And so just remember, this guy's sharp. He's a people person, and he's going to do good things. And then when he got done, he came over and was talking in the meeting. And he looked at me, and he says, "Man, we've been doing this a long time." And I said, "We have." And, you know, job well done. But there's a new day. It's the way it works. I think as I look at it, I don't know what they're going to do. But I think if you go by resume, I don't see how they don't give it to Brian Santiago.
I'm with you, PK, and it makes a lot of sense. And, you know, Brian Santiago, he was involved in setting up a lot of the marquee coaching hires that are in place right now with Kalani Sitake and Kevin Young. You know, Kalani Sitake's long-term extension, Brian Santiago was involved in that. And getting Kevin Young as the BYU basketball head coach, which was a dream hire for BYU basketball, you can give a lot of credit to Brian Santiago on that and his connections in basketball. And I remember sitting in Kevin Young's office this summer talking about it, and he gave a lot of credit to Santiago. So he's got relationships where you just kind of keep the machine going with the athletic department if you hire Brian Santiago. I think a lot of fans would maybe say, you know, maybe go outside. Maybe is there some Kevin Young type hire that's outside of the BYU bubble that could make a real splash? But, you know, maybe continuity would be the move to just go forward. And, you know, because Tom Holmoe's legacy, I think, will be the fact that BYU's fan base and interest grew somehow when you were playing the likes of Savannah State and San Diego in basketball, yet the fan base, the money, the commitment, it all grew. And that's pretty remarkable when you kind of take a step back and see and think about, because those were tough times in Independence and WCC. And Holmoe even alluded to some of that when years 5 and 6 in his tenure as the AD, he's like, I don't know if I can do this job. And but he got on the other side and got BYU to the places that they were dreaming of for so many years.
When you have a situation where you're going in to replace somebody successful, and by all accounts Tom Holmoe was successful, I don't think anybody can doubt that, and he was a bridge builder himself, that I think in those situations you don't have to take and decide based on the outgoing person. But I think the outgoing person's input is extremely important, and I'm going to point to a couple of situations, good and bad. I don't think going back 25 years that the administration at that time really took the input from Lavelle Edwards on what he thought, right? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, I don't think the choice that they made was Lavelle Edwards' choice. If he were given the choice, I think he goes in a different direction. And as sad as it is and unfortunate for those involved, that hire didn't work out. It was a disaster. Doesn't mean they're not good people, but it just didn't work out. And there's a multitude of reasons. So that's for the bad. Then I can cite one from the good. And boy, it really turned out great. And this is going back in 2004, 2005. Chris Hill hires Urban Meyer. And Chris then brings in Urban. And Chris and the people around him, was one other person in particular who was super close to Chris, working in the athletic department at the time, told Urban Meyer, we strongly suggest that you retain Kyle Whittingham. And Urban, to his credit, he could have brought in anybody he wanted. He was the boss when it came to that, right? And he listened. And he retained Kyle Whittingham. And they go 22-2 with an awesome defense. And then at that point, when Urban leaves, he's leaving from a position of power and success. So then it's a no-brainer to give the job to Kyle. And imagine if, I don't know what would have happened, but suppose Urban would have said, nah, I'm bringing in my own guys. I want my own guys. But he didn't. He listened to the people who were there and took their counsel and retained Kyle. And whatever Tom says, whichever way he wants to go with this and what are his thoughts, I think they should take that into serious consideration. And I can't say specifically that he's going to officially 100% endorse Brian Santiago, but what I know he did say at the press conference is Brian Santiago is my right-hand guy. He's my wingman. Yep. That's a pretty strong endorsement. I took it as.
I'm with you. I thought the same thing, and he's given a lot to Brian Santiago, and it's been, a lot of build-up to this revenue-sharing era that's about to take off this fall. Brian Santiago already has a clear understanding of the direction that BYU wants to go with that, and BYU is always wanting to avoid risk. And you bring up a great point about Kyle Whittingham because in that time, imagine BYU tried to get Kyle Whittingham as a defensive coordinator. When Gary Croton was the head coach, and it was a smart move by Utah to retain Kyle Whittingham because now obviously Utah's went on to have so much success, and I think they'll have probably a bounce back year this season. Brian Santiago I think would do a really solid job in the AD role at BYU. He's been there for 2 decades, just like Tom Holmoe, and I think he would bring a lot of energy to the position. He's competitive. And he's got strong connections to, a lot of influential people at BYU. And, you see him sitting courtside at basketball games, Gifford Nilsson, Travis Hansen, Ryan Smith. I mean, Danny Ainge, he's got a lot of connections in the hierarchy of BYU greats and notable people in this athletic department. So I think it would make a lot of sense. And but I think BYU should just take their time and turn over every stone because these sort of moves don't happen. I mean, Shane Reese, the president at BYU, it's the first time a BYU president has had to find an AD since Samuelson. And that's been, that covered an entire presidency. Kevin Worthen didn't have to hire an AD. So this is a big move. And Holmoe even laid it out yesterday that a lot is upcoming. And, when you're seeing reports yesterday that the Power Four conferences are considering hiring a CEO and this sport could change drastically in the next 12 months. We don't know what direction it's going to be. And I think an underrated aspect to the next AD is positioning BYU for whatever the next phase of college football is.
And it's coming.
It is. And it's like the Big 12 is great, and it was a dream landing spot, and it worked out perfectly for BYU. but you've got to stay a couple steps ahead, because when 2031 rolls around and that media rights deal is done, what's next for the Big 12? And BYU's got to be in a position to maintain access to whatever the championship tier of college football is.
They have to. Yeah, it's imperative, and they want to. And, their NIL thing there, we'll switch a little bit and move on. We had on Rondo Felberg, and I asked him about what did you think when you saw that quote in the ESPN story, "You're not going to outbid us." My wife had to come and pick me up off the floor when I read that quote. I mean, I get that they got to do it, but to be that brazen and bold, and Rondo said it himself. And I was talking about that with you.
Yeah.
That comment, that was wow. You're not supposed to say it, and not only did that what's that name? What's his name? Jörg Lillenquist?
Yeah. Lillianquist, yeah.
Lillianquist. And not only did he say it, he said it in the most bodacious manner possible.
We're not going to get outbid.
Put your checkbooks away. You ain't outbidding us, suckers.
Hands down, we win.
Yeah. Whatever you got, we're going higher. So back the bleep off. Wow.
Shocking.
It really was. For BYU, which is like you used to just thought it was a badge of honor to have Lavelle Edwards be in the bottom half of the WAC in terms of pay. We had, towards the end of his life, we were doing a golf tournament. I think it was Haloti Nada had a golf tournament. He's a local guy, obviously played at Oregon. And we're at a Thanksgiving point, DJ and I, and Coach Edwards comes over, and we were joking about that coach's calling thing that he would do after the games, which, get out of town. Nobody would think about doing that now, right? And he looked at us, and he smiled, and he says, "Well, I had to do it. They're paying me $75 a show." And we laughed. He laughed. It was all funny. It's like, well, yeah, they don't pay anything. And so $75, sure. And now we're not being outbid. Man, how do you think that was received? I think if I'm a fan, I'm thinking sweet. But I'm wondering among the leadership, did they get a little queasy about that?
No question. I mean, because BYU, that was a shocking quote. And because BYU has never operated, they've always done more with less, but they've always had more than they put off. And, BYU was always tried to run in the black and they never go into debt. And to have that sort of comment is just shocking. And, yes, that was a shocking comment for BYU and its approach. And it ties into last summer, when CBS Sports, they polled anonymous college basketball coaches and who's got the biggest NIL war chest. And college basketball coaches believed that BYU was in the top 3. I mean, this is just, night and day stuff from where BYU sports has lived. But I think a lot of it circles back to Tom Holmoe and, Brian Santiago, too, where they're not going to be public and say, we've got all these resources and this boosters, but they want to have BYU be at the highest levels of college athletics. That's always been their pursuit. Years ago when people would say, I don't know if BYU sports are going to survive. It's going to be like BYU Idaho. It's going to be the new Ricks. Yeah. That was never the case. I mean, there's a lot of competitive people in BYU athletics. And, maybe there were some administrators back in the day who did have that. But from the president now, the advancement VP, whoever the next AD is, I mean, they want to win at the highest levels. And now that they understand, and maybe the brethren also understand that, hey, this money thing is okay. It's all above board. Let's go chase this thing, because the exposure that they got from football this past year, and honestly, the exposure from getting a commitment and signing from AJ DeBansa, I mean, that's stuff they haven't received in years. I mean, despite all the successes that Holmoe experienced with the athletic department, there were not many national showcase moments for football during independence. They just were out of sight, out of mind in November.
Yeah, for sure.
This past year in the Big 12, I mean, even Santiago told me it's been a game changer for BYU being in the Big 12. And so I think there's still this competitive desire to throw more money at this thing and take it to higher levels than ever before.
Yeah, I think so. And I think another reason to tie it back into Brian is I think that whoever they bring in and give the job to, that person needs to negotiate and navigate the so-called BYU way.
Yeah.
You got to know how to play it. And it's different there than it is at other places. And there's a lot of people who have influence and can exert that influence as they so choose. So you got to placate them. You got to make sure that they're okay with the decisions that you're making. And that's where I think it's important to have where it really plays into Brian, or if they should go to Chad, that they are on the inside and they know how to play the so-called game.
And I think within that, too, is that they know how to play the game and also raise funds and inspire people to throw money at it within the game. And I think that's also got to be a key piece. You got to get someone that's inspiring people to want to continue to put more money. And hopefully revenue sharing creates an aspect where the fans are not feeling as drained and feeling like they got to commit more and more money, because I do feel like there's this difference between the millionaire, billionaire donors and the middle-class fan. There's still got to be a place for them, and still finding that balance to give them opportunities to feel involved, because the money is right in front of fans more than ever. So finding that balance and still giving those opportunities to that middle-class fan to still get them inspired to donate, that's going to be an opportunity, a challenge that for the next AD. And I think both those guys have done a pretty good job of that in the past.
Well, I can tell you I'm worried a little bit about BYU sports, to the point where when we were down in Tempe in November, after that win, I slipped the AD $20 as an ASU guy. Yeah. All that chaos and melee out in the field, I gave him I slipped. I said, here,
I like the intensity.
put this to good use, man.
Yormark needed to line that game up again in Provo this year.
I'm surprised they did. And I said, if we could keep Sam Levitt, I'm doing my part. Here's 20 from me.
Hey, Graham.
So-
hey.
Get the GoFundMe started.
Yeah. I'm doing my part, people. You got to do your part. Now, you as men, all of you men listeners, you better do your part, and you better do it right now. You better do it today, because tomorrow is Valentine's Day. And good news for you, we got the owner of J. Brooks Jewelers, John. He's in studio. He can tell you about custom design jewelry and how it works. He can tell you the difference between custom and stock. He can tell you about artisans. That's a fancy word. I don't even know what it means, but it's right here on my sheet, so I'm going to talk about it. And Jay, you tell us about it, JB.
Well, one of the things that makes everybody can draw a picture of a ring or show you out of a catalog, but to be able to, and even design it in a CAD system where they draw the mounting, but once the casting is done, to be able to finish that by hand and to make it look as beautiful as anything really that's being sold in America, that's what we have at J. Brooks. We have two of the finest artisans or jewelers or goldsmiths, depending on the term you want to use, who are able to take from the very simplest to the most complicated pieces, where even consumers sometimes are like, I can't believe you made this right here in Utah. So if you want to do something that's really classic, we obviously do that. But if you want to do something that's one of a kind and make something that's as complicated as possibly can be done, it's nice to know that the artisans are right here in town, and they're young guys. They're 35 and 40. So one of the things that makes that important is their eyesight is still really crisp and sharp. All these rings that we're describing under custom made today are all made under microscopes. And sometimes some of these rings will have 200 to 300 small diamonds, which means they have 800 to 1,000 prongs. And how in the world do they make that all balance and look perfect? And one of the secrets of that is all done under microscopes at 10 to 30 power. And I tell sometimes people, the easy way to imagine is your mind, what does that mean? Well, if diamonds aren't all level, when they get dirty, then that shows up. So imagine building a brick sidewalk and how hard it is to get those bricks all level. And those zones are 4 inches by 10 inches. We're doing things that are 1 to 2 millimeters, and everything is perfect. And that's the level of artisanship that we have. And so when people come in, they are just so pleased, can't believe it's all done right here in town. So come by, take a look. You hold it in your hand. You'll be able to feel the difference and see the difference in a store where we have things where a group of ladies have selected, curated a wonderful selection, and really make it where the statement is true, where women know where women want. J. Brooks Jewelers and Murray and Lehigh.
There you go. And a go-in Valentine's as an added incentive. Jay Brooks will throw in chocolates and flowers for that special someone. You guys, you cannot screw this one up. Check it out on their website, jbrooksjewelers.com. Thank you, JB. He'll be with us here in about 20 minutes. And take advantage of it. Listen up to what he's got to say right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Mitch Harper, BYU insider for KSL Sports, joining us. BYU football certainly shocked the monkey this past season doing what they did. You know, I thought if everything had come together, 7, not counting a bowl because you didn't know who they were going to play. But I thought if they went 7-5, boy, that would be a great season. I think Tom Holmoe basically said that himself.
I thought that was an underrated tidbit.
Yeah.
You know, because I talked to him at the Big 12 spring meetings in May, last May in Texas, and he told me, he's like, Mitch, this is going to be a good team. Because at that time I thought, if they get to 6, I mean, that's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, did he kind of foreshadow this 11 wins? But he cleared that up yesterday. He's like, I didn't see that coming.
Right. I don't think any of us did. It's awesome that it happened.
Yeah.
Way to go. I wish him success this year, too. It's always fun to be talking about winners behind the mic than it is teams that don't win. So you look at the team, combine it with guys they got coming back and the recruiting. Now, the thing about BYU's recruiting is, you know, a lot of them will see you in 2. So what does that mean? And I know, who's the kid, Madsen, out of Northern California or the Central Valley? He's supposed to be all that, but he's not going to take the field until 27.
Yeah.
So you never know what to think with their recruiting because who's going, who's coming. And then if they stay, you know, they made a big deal out of some kid out of East Valley down in the Phoenix area, tight end, and it never really happened. And now he's gone. And then you get some other kids that maybe don't get the hype, and they play well. Mm-hmm. And that's across the board in any program. So what is your assessment of the incoming talent combined with the returning talent?
Returning talent is some of the best talent that Kalani's, retention that they've assembled since he's been the head coach. And it's reason why I think people can look at BYU as a potential Big 12 title contender next year. They retained, they brought back a lot, L.J. Martin, Jake Retzloff, Isaiah Glasker comes back at linebacker. Retaining that linebacker unit was huge. Jack Kelly, he said that it was a 50-50 decision between leaving for the NFL or coming back. He decides to come back. And so the retention was a good piece. The newcomers, not much in the freshman side of things are going to come in and impact. They've got an offensive lineman in Andrew Williams, 6'8", 285. Because of the need to identify depth at the offensive tackle spot, that can be an area where you look at maybe a freshman maybe gets in the 2 deep. But aside from him and maybe Kendall Wall from Mountain Ridge High School, I think is going to be a really good player. They're going to slide him from edge to defensive tackle, again, an area of need. There's not many freshmen that I look at and say they're going to be 2 deep guys this year. The transfers, though, all of them, I think they're going to be expected to have an impact and be right away, step in and contribute. And I think that's where those are really noteworthy additions. Carson Ryan at tight end, he comes in from Utah. He's going to be looked upon to be an every down tight end, can do it whether it's blocking, receiving. BYU's got to get the tight ends going as far as in the passing game for BYU. So he's going to be one. And then, of course, Keanu Tanavasa, who, Jay Hill did not hold back on signing day, saying he might be the best defensive tackle, defensive lineman in the country. And you know what? I kind of like that take. Kalani tends to be a little bit hesitant to give anyone praise. These guys are making money now. They're making a lot of money. There's a lot invested in Keanu Tanavasa. Put out the expectation. You're paying a premium to get that guy to be one of the best, not only in the Big 12, but maybe in the country. Live up to it. I think Keanu Tanavasa is taking on that challenge, and he's going to be a leader of BYU's defense. His addition alone changes the whole outlook of BYU, what they can be on the defensive line and defensively. Number 1 defense in the Big 12 a season ago. He gives them reason to believe that maybe they could do it again.
And then how about some guys that weren't household names but were on the team and their time's coming, because you got to have that too. You got to bring along guys that, maybe they don't get a whole lot of run early, but by the time they've been in the program a year, two, they're ready to make that next step. That's an important aspect. Every program, I don't care who you are, Alabama, whomever, you got to develop guys.
So BYU loses Jacob Robinson. He was a do-it-all cornerback, nickelback, for BYU last season. A guy that I look at that's going to take a big step forward from his freshman season a year ago to his sophomore campaign is Jonathan Cabella, a kid out of Texas. He got quite a bit of snaps last year in a pretty loaded cornerback room. You go back and dive into some of the time he was on the field. They were in key stretches of games, particularly against Baylor, where they sealed off that win in Waco. Jonathan Cabella is going to be a really good player for BYU, and he could play that Eddie Hecker, Jacob Robinson role where he could do a lot of different things. And even talking to Jacob Robinson, a lot of excitement about Jonathan Cabella, maybe taking over that spot next year. So he's a name to watch. And staying in the secondary too, BYU's got a pretty busy safety unit. They bring back Tanner Wall, they bring back Raider Damouni, Falatau Satuwala, and Tommy Parasas. Those are kind of your top four. But a wild card in the mix is Matthias Leach. Really good athlete, redshirted this past year, underrated recruit, but the coaching staff really likes his potential, and he's like 6'3". He'd be a huge, big-bodied safety on the back end. He maybe could slide to corner if needed, because that's an area of need. But Matthias Leach is another player in the secondary that coaches are really high on, and they got a big future for him. And then some of the offensive linemen. There's guys like Jake Griffin who signed years ago, to your point about these guys get sent off on missions and then you don't hear from them for years. Jake Griffin's from Mesa, Arizona. He signed when Jeff Grimes was the offensive coordinator. That's how long it's been. But his time might be coming to contend for some offensive tackles time along BYU's offensive line. So those are three players that are maybe knocking on the door, young guys that could maybe their time is coming here in the near future.
Is Swanson, the tight end, the most or only prominent kid leaving on a mission? Am I missing? Who am I missing?
Yeah. He's the one from last year's team that actually got time. He's the only one. Everyone else is pretty much sign and send. So he's a little bit of a throwback where he's going when, after a year of playing. We used to see that all the time from BYU. Everyone else is pretty much coming from the high school ranks and then going directly on a mission.
And then what are they going to do at running back? Obviously, LJ's the guy. But Ropati's done, right?
He could be back, potentially. And it could be a deal with, potentially the JUCO avenue. They're still looking into that. But also he falls under the umbrella of Logan Latui, the defensive end who's coming back for a year. Logan Latui qualified for a medical red shirt. Hinckley Ropati's had multiple seasons where he's had injuries. They're exploring maybe a medical red shirt for him. And he's been around the team facility working out. So that could be possible for Hinckley Ropati to have a year, which is crazy to think because he joined the team in 2020 as a JUCO transfer. It's 2025, and there still maybe could be eligibility there. So that Ropati, there's a chance there that he could be back.
What else do they have at that position?
So then you've got, a player in Sione Moa, and he's another guy that maybe his time is coming. Freshman last year had a big performance against Kansas State, also broke off some big runs in that bowl game against Colorado.
Yeah.
He's probably going to be that number 2 behind LJ Martin. And they're really excited about the potential of Sione Moa. You've also got Enoch Nawahine. He had some games where he started last year, was serviceable, former Utah State running back. You've also got Pokai Honga, who coaches last year, compared to maybe the next Reno Mahe with his versatility. Reno, when he was coming out of Brighton High School, he was a running back, wide receiver type. That's Pokai Honga. And then also Javesa Damouni, another local kid out of Ridgeline High School, redshirted last season. He's also in the mix at running back. And then they bring in a freshman from Las Vegas, Kel Breslin, and he was a 3-star prospect in Vegas. He comes in and will contend for time as well at the freshman spot or running back spot. But it's Martin, it's Moa, and then if you have Ropati possibly coming back, that'd be your top 3.
Mitch Harper, KSL Sports BYU Insider, joining us here until the top of the hour. Your take on who's behind the Jewish quarterback. And can we get done with that story now?
I think so.
I'm over it.
I think so. Just let's see him take another step forward.
It was
now.
a novelty last season, but okay. Now I want to hear about. When I hear about Jake Retzlaff, I want to hear about because he's completing 70% of his passes and throwing for 300 yards. Not that he's Jewish. That's a nice story, but I want to hear more about his playing ability. And he's going to be the starter. We had A-Rod on here recently, and he's talking about he must have his completion percentage increased. And I think people are maybe to the point where a little bit overhyped, but I think they're pointing to Sarkisian and the jump he made from junior to senior year. We saw that in that second year. What were they, 14-1 with a Cotton Bowl win? And obviously he had made a significant jump. And Retzlaff, good, but 2 interceptions really stick out. And I think we can all remember them, the one against Kansas State and then the overthrow against ASU when it looked like they were going in to win the game. And but it didn't happen. He also made some good plays, too. I expect him to improve. Round out the quarterback depth chart as you see it now.
I would say that number 2 is probably McKay Hillstead, the transfer from Utah State, redshirted last year. I would put him as maybe a slight early favorite in front of Trayson Bourget, a transfer from Western Michigan. But BYU only has 3 quarterbacks entering spring. And, they pursued a TCU quarterback a little bit who ended up at Oklahoma State in the portal. But aside from him, there wasn't much in the portal that BYU looked at the quarterback position. And, I think in this 105-man roster era, you'd kind of think maybe 4 quarterbacks would be the spot for BYU to have as far as on the roster. Now, they do have a walk-on commitment. I don't even know if you call it a walk-on anymore in this 105 era, but a kid from Bountiful High School who committed this past signing day. He could potentially join and be that 4th quarterback. But there's not much after Jake Retzlaff at that QB spot. But what is promising is that Hillstead and Bourget have started games at the FBS level. And Hillstead's got a pretty good arm. You saw in fall camp last year that clearly the playbook, it was a whirlwind for him, and he was learning that. But you did see arm strength, quite a bit of that. I mean, the deep passes that BYU and Aaron Roderick love in this offense, Hillstead gives you that. Granted, it was third-team offense, third-team defense, basically his peers on the field at that time, but he was standing out. I mean, there were mistakes, but the arm talent's there. Bourget, I think, is more of a, the cliche game manager type, but pretty solid quarterback. I think he's made a lot of improvements during his time at BYU, but I'd say Hillstead is probably the guy that maybe gives you the hope that he could be a QB1 in 2026, because that's what they need to figure out. Even if Retzlaff does go down, you need to have someone ready for 2025, but also who's the next big thing in 2026. So I don't know if that's in the building right now. So that's a challenge for BYU, and spring will be important to really identifying that and rounding out that quarterback depth chart.
All right. We got one more segment with Mitch. NCAA tournament for the big money Cougars. We'll get to that next. Stay with us. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The John Watson Northern Utah High School Players of the Week Award honors the best high school boys and girls basketball players in Northern Utah each week during the prep season. Our winners are Malika Satuwala. I got the Satuwala. I'm down on that. Just wasn't sure on that. From Bountiful High, and Dresden Jensen from Viewmont High School. Satuwala had 22 points and a whole bunch of assists in a 67-28 rout of Bonneville before tallying 16 points in a 42-35 win at Clearfield. Jensen scored 17 points in a 56-53 win over Woods Cross before tallying 21 points in a 73-61 win over Northridge. See why new and used car buyers give John Watson Chevrolet more 5-star reviews than any other Chevy dealer in Utah. John Watson Chevrolet, your 5-star Chevy dealer. All right, Mitch Harper, KSL Sports Insider for BYU. Basketball, huge win over West Virginia. Both teams needed that, and the Cougs got it, man. For once, they executed down the stretch and played well and made the plays that they needed to make. Now, they have got a killer schedule coming up. Kansas State on Saturday. Well, let's see, Kansas State is only the hottest team in the conference right now, playing as well as anybody. They're knocking off big dogs left and right if you consider Arizona and Kansas a big dog, which I do. So they're playing great. This is awesome, the Big 12. I mean, so much on the line, great competition. You don't have to sit around and wait every 2 or 3 weeks for Gonzaga and St. Mary's. It's almost like every game. But the big question is, have they found something? Are they where they want to be right now?
I don't think they're where they want to be right now, but I do believe that they're trending towards putting together their best basketball in March. And I think that's reason for excitement with this team because, I mean, PK, you've seen so many BYU basketball teams. They peak in December, January, and then they just burn out in the postseason and they don't do anything. And I feel like this group is still has not hit their peak, and they could still have the best version of themselves maybe in a tournament. And that's ultimately where it all comes down to. BYU's had so much success over the years in regular season games, and they've had some breakthroughs against the Gonzagas of the world, but do something when a bracket's laid out. And I think that's kind of been the mindset for Kevin Young, is that he understood that there was going to be some growing pains, especially when you had a non-conference with not many challenges. And, you know, this group, they had a really good performance at West Virginia, and they got unlikely performances from bench players like Trey Stewart giving you 8 points. Mihailo Boskovic, a seldomly used center in Big 12 play, he comes off the bench and hits 6 points and gets the game sealing and one opportunity. So, Kevin Young has no problem going, 11 players still this deep in the season, which is kind of crazy. You don't see that very often, but they'll find answers on any given night, and they'll still be a tough out at the Marriott Center. So huge weekend coming up. That K-State game. K-State's got 5 consecutive wins or 6 consecutive wins, 4 consecutive quad one victories. That's going to be a big one for BYU. If they can protect home court there, then you've got a string of quad one opportunities with Kansas, Arizona, and ASU. That if you can get 2 of those, I think you're on the right side of the bubble and maybe trending up to being in that 8-9 threshold in the bracket.
What record, conference-wise, do you think gets them in?
11-9, because you've got to factor in the no Sunday aspect. You got to drop them a seed line. Like right now, if the projections today are, second to last team in, I say you knock them down one line, and that means you're out, because we've seen that so many times over the years. I mean, last year, you're a 5 seed in the brackets, but you end up with a 6 because of that no Sunday play. So that's a factor here. And they've got to get to a winning record, because their non-conference strength of schedule, it's not good. It's in the bottom 40 in many strength of schedule metrics. That non-conference, there's nothing there. And it's all within Big 12 play that the committee is going to look at when it comes to BYU. The predictive ratings love BYU. But they need a winning record in Big 12 play to feel comfortable and confident that they're going to be in that field of 68.
I think going forward, we're going to see that non-conference get better.
No question.
Especially with the big shot coming in.
And Kevin Young, I think he, at stretches, I think he got a little bit bored with some of those non-conference games. He goes from every night in the NBA to then hey, get fired up for Florida A&M. I mean, come on. Like, no. He's coming here to play some big-time teams, and that is going to ramp up definitely with the bands that come in next year. They've already got the Villanova game, the Diamond Head Classic in Hawaii for Thanksgiving.
Right.
They're going to play a lot of good games next year.
So Texas A&M, but not Florida A&M.
Yes, that's right.
I'm with you. Well, Mitch, the hour went by quick, as it normally does. Thanks for coming in.
You bet, PK.
All right, we'll have your rival, Steve Bartle, our Utah Utes insider for KSL Sports. Right now, we've got somebody who's going to make you look good, and he is our guy, John Brooks from J. Brooks Jewelers. So much is at stake in Valentine's Day. This could be the decider between a happy life and a miserable life.
I think there's some truth there, and I always tell the guys, whatever you do, don't screw this holiday up. This is an important holiday to the women. They want to make sure that you remember that they're your sweetheart, and so we try to make you look good. And the way that we do that is by having a wonderful selection and a wide variety of price ranges. So whether you want to spend a few $100s, a few thousand, or a few $100,000. We have all those kind of things in place that we can help you with all those things. And we make it easy. So when you come in, we have a great staff of ladies who will help you and educate you. Also, and not only educate you in what the quality of the jewelry is, but also educate you in what the style of the day is. So you're buying things that are fashion forward and help to fit your sweetheart style. And whether she's a fashion girl and wants to be on the edge, or whether she's kind of a conservative girl and wants to be something simple, we have things in every price range and in every metal: yellow gold, white gold, sterling silver, and a wonderful selection of styles that'll just fit her and whether she's, again, super active, or she wants something where she can go out on the town. So I think you'd be very pleased. And with Valentine's, we make it easy in one-step shopping, where we have chocolate and candy ready for you, flowers that are there, all part of free gifts with purchase, and just to make you look good. So I think if you'll take a look at our website, you'll kind of get a flavor of who we are and what we're about. Again, remember, we're a family business owned locally, operated right here in Salt Lake City. And everything that we do manufacturing-wise is done right here in Utah as well. So we're really a family-based company, a Utah company, founded here in 1997 and here for the long haul.
There it is. You got locations in Murray and Lehigh, and the website is jbrooksjewelers.com. That's the initial J, jbrooksjewelers.com. We'll see you in about 20 minutes when you can enlighten our guys once more. Thank you, John.
Thank you, PK.
All right, coming up next, we'll do what we did with BYU, only turn it over to Utah. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.